G'day mate, 40 here. So I'm hanging out in Coogee, Sydney, Australia, and there are just so many nice public facilities here. We have great toilets, great bathrooms, great changing rooms, great showers, great beaches, great public transport, great gardens, right? A great harbour, great nature walks. We have all sorts of great natural scenery. There's virtually no trash. We have all this abundance here in Sydney. Like, how come we don't get to have nice things in America? Like, why don't we get the provision of abundant public services in America? And it's all because you've got a tiny minority of people that commit astronomical rates of crime. So you can't have as many public bathrooms in America's more diverse areas because you've got a lot of criminals who use them to deal drugs, to do prostitution. So I'm looking at this New York Times article. If New York is so great, why isn't there anywhere to pee? So why doesn't New York get to have nice things? This is by Theodora Siegel. She operates the Twitter account Got to Go New York City. Right? It's a crowdsourced account of New York City bathrooms. So why does New York City have so few public bathrooms? Why do American cities have so few public bathrooms? Because of the horrible behavior of a tiny minority of Americans. And that's why we don't get to have these nice things in America that we have here in Sydney and other first world countries. But she never touches on that in this op-ed. So she says, in the middle of Times Square in July 2021, sipped the last of my iced coffee. I realized I had to go. I was turned away from several businesses. I burst into a McDonald's, was told the bathroom was for customers only. I paid $3 for a bottle of water, ran upstairs. So why doesn't New York City have nice public facilities, right? Because those groups that commit astronomical amounts of crime destroy public space. Right? You only get to have nice things in New York City or Los Angeles or Chicago on private space where they get to keep people out. So here in Sydney, you get nice public facilities, like nice public goods. You get socialized medicine, right? You get abundant public housing, an abundant welfare state, because you don't have a tiny minority of the population who just abuses the heck out of any public goods. So the struggle to find an accessible bathroom is a public health issue. Well, you know why there aren't a lot of publicly accessible bathrooms? Because of crime, right? So these same lefties who are decrying the lack of public facilities and public goods and public welfare services, right? They are the ones who push for depolicing, which means the very worst elements are no longer discouraged by active police enforcement, so they act terribly and they destroy the public space. This is why we don't get to have public bathrooms in New York City. To make sure everyone has a place to go, New York City needs to treat public bathroom access as an infrastructure problem deserving of an immediate, robust response. Well, guess what would happen if you built more public bathrooms in New York City? Like, crime-prone people would abuse them. New York City has 8.5 million residents, millions more tourists, fewer than 1,200 public bathrooms. Why? Because when you have public bathrooms in New York City, they get abused. So the only way to maintain nice things is to encourage law enforcement to protect public spaces. But right now we're discouraging law enforcement. So the bad people are wrecking our public spaces. Where are New Yorkers supposed to go when they have to go? Well, it'd be a lot easier if you were able to maintain a public space, right, that was kept safe. But as long as you have criminal elements running wild and the police are discouraged from doing their job and bad people are punished, then you don't get to have public bathrooms. So she says, Theodora Siegel, I am a graduate student studying opera who runs around the city filming sanitary and accessible restrooms in her spare time. She sounds wonderful. hang around photographing restrooms in her spare time. The subway has become my editing studio. I've learned that a lack of accessible bathrooms has especially serious consequences for anyone who's not wealthy, white, and cisgender. Yeah, we're here in Coogee, mate. So it's all going down here, looking out at the beautiful ocean. It's Sunday afternoon, 4:40 p.m. Oh, Monday afternoon. It's 4:40 p.m. Monday, January 16th. Just hanging out here, reading the New York Times. Had a nice swim. So, 44-year-old resident with IBS had to defecate between two parked cars on a morning commute. You know why? Because we discourage police from doing their jobs, so bad people do what bad people do, and they destroy public spaces such as public restrooms. But this woman's a lefty. She doesn't connect how it's left-wing activism against the police that is destroying public services such as public bathrooms. Homeless couple were denied a bathroom code despite offering to buy something with their limited funds. You wouldn't have this problem if you had safe public spaces with strong law enforcement presence. A tourist from London witnessed her elderly friend wet herself. American cities have a problem with lack of publicly accessible bathrooms, but if they build those bathrooms, then they get desecrated by bad people. And the police and the law enforcement and criminal justice system, who should be punishing the people who ruin our public spaces, well, they're under the control of the left, who doesn't believe in punishing people who do bad things. Bathroom access should be a basic human right. Budget cuts shuttered public toilets in the 1970s. Well, it's not budget cuts, it's the trashing of these public services by a tiny minority of our population who does not get punished. I remember walking down Pico Boulevard, and walking towards me was this crazy person who was just knocking over every trash can. So there are a bunch of Jews who fundraised and set up all sorts of trash cans in Pico Robertson to keep the place clean. And this crazy person was just walking down the streets knocking over trash cans, and it'd be pointless to call the police on him because the police have now been discouraged from doing their jobs. New York City has tried to build sanitized, self-sanitizing automatic paid toilets. Right, only 4 have been installed. So New York City is ranked 93rd in the nation when it comes to public bathrooms per capita. So cities abroad are much farther ahead of New York. Why? I don't know. What's the difference in the population, say, between Sydney and New York City? Right? Sydney does not have a sizable minority of its population who destroys public spaces. She never addresses this. Yeah, cities abroad can build more public restrooms, they can build public spaces, they can build public facilities, they can have generous welfare provisions, right? Because they don't have a tiny minority of their population who exorbitantly uses and destroys public spaces. So this woman is speaking outside of City Hall in support of the bathroom bill, encouraging New York City to build more bathrooms. New York City should be our greatest city in the world. It's time our bathroom access reflects that. But she never comes to grips with why bathroom access and other public goods get destroyed and have to be severely limited because of the horrible behavior of a tiny minority of the population. Like, until she comes to grips with that reality, we have a public culture problem, a crime problem, a disproportionate crime problem caused by a minority of the population and now our police, law enforcement, and justice department are discouraged from acting on those who are destroying our public spaces. Public infrastructure should allow the greatest diversity of people to build a life here. Yeah, guess what? You can't build a life when you have criminals running wild and destroying everything precious that you try to build up for the public. So, for example, I know from my conversion to Orthodox Judaism has created a lot of beautiful things. A beautiful, intense community where people really care for each other because it has very strict boundaries. So, unless you're able to create in a private space with strict boundaries, right, then you're vulnerable to the worst people around you, and whether or not police are incentivized to arrest the worst people around you, and then whether or not district attorneys are incentivized to prosecute people who are destroying public spaces. So I'm here in Coogee, beautiful public spaces here in Sydney. It just makes me reflect again, like what we're missing in America, where we don't have these big, clean, generous public spaces. Because in Sydney, they don't have America's criminal underclass that's just trashing everything, just running off the hook. Similarly, there was a back and forth on Twitter between a Leaf who moved to Holland for the dense public transport. Yeah, you can have beautiful things, man, but you have to protect them. All right? So it's so beautiful there. Like, it's just such a safe place. I've been in Australia for almost 3 months, never once felt afraid. Now, on the other hand, in Bondi, so that's about 5 miles that direction, right? There used to be attacks on Jews. In fact, in 2013, 5 Jews, including like 3 or 4 guys who'd been in the IDF, were walking home from a Shabbat dinner, and they were assaulted and beaten so badly that they were sent to hospital. So I don't know. I am unaware in my 30 years in Los Angeles. Right? I'm unaware in my 30 years in Los Angeles a group of Jews ever being beaten so badly and sent to the hospital. But that's happened fairly regularly in Bondi. I've heard stories about this one Jewish kid that the Australians would just like flick his ears every day, chase him home after school. He eventually went deaf and committed suicide. Another guy I heard about in this community was beaten so badly that he was put in a wheelchair for life. Other people get beaten so badly they've been hospitalized. Just people looking to hurt Jews. Because how do they know they were Jewish? Because they were wearing yarmulkes. So they were wearing Jewish regalia. Yeah, Americans' natural inclination is to run away, right? So America was settled by people who ran away from Europe. But now there's no more place to run. So now we have to stand and deliver, stand and fight. So who were the attackers? I'm told they were white Australians. So there are people here with very painful memories of just ongoing harassment. There's this one rabbi who basically can't walk through a section in eastern suburbs, which is affluent Australia, without getting like viciously verbally assaulted, Holocaust remarks, etc. So I haven't experienced any of that, but I just heard about that. And I can't recall any instance in LA, in my 28 years in LA, where say 5 Jews have been attacked as Jews because they're wearing a yarmulke. They were attacked so badly that they were sent to the hospital. I know individual Jews have been attacked in New York City, but are you aware of 5 4, 5, 6 Jews attacked for being Jewish and then sent to a hospital. I'm not really aware of that in New York City, but it's happened a number of times in Bondi. So apparently it hasn't happened for 10 years, and I haven't encountered any of this. But I do encounter Jews with very strong negative feelings about white Australians because they and their friends have just been verbally and physically assaulted. And I know several Australian Jewish friends who much prefer it in Los Angeles because they virtually never get verbally, let alone physically assaulted for being Jewish. Talk to you later.
Worried about that flag.